This is the Check It Out podcast. I'm Troy Swanson.
Joe Malarkey.
Tish Hayes.
And we're here at the Moraine Valley Library, and we want to do, this is the first podcast in a series about our graphic novel Symposium, which is coming up in September the 18th and 19th. It's a Thursday and Friday. Mm-hmm. This is an academic event aimed at our curriculum that will feature 3 lectures and then a gaming day all around graphic novels, geek culture, comic books. What am I missing?
All of that.
All that good stuff. So as a setup, we wanted to just talk about graphic novels and maybe talk about our library collection and things that we can offer, and how people that don't read graphic novels regularly maybe could find their way into this broad genre.
It is a really broad genre. That's an excellent word, I think, to use, is that graphic novels are as diverse as any other kind of literature. So you have things in the superhero realm that I think people are really familiar with, those comic books, the things that all of those action movies are based on. And we have some of that here. So if you are, into Batman or Superman, maybe read those comics as a kid, I definitely recommend looking into the things that we have here now, because what's interesting, I think, with heroes like Batman and Superman is that the adult stories that are told about them are a little bit dark. They delve into mythology, they delve into issues around identity, so they're way more complex than maybe like the comics or the cartoons that you remember as a kid. Troy, I know you just read All-Star Superman.
All-Star Superman by Grant Morrison, yeah, which was fun, especially if you're a Superman aficionado. I think you're going to like it, but it's really a treatment of Superman as this mythic figure, which in some ways he's become. So, and the whole story centers on what happens to some degree, what happens if Superman had cancer and was going to die, and how would he live out the rest of his life and battle his enemies. So it was pretty fun. And I think if there was another one to throw out, we have Year One of Batman, right, by Frank Miller.
Yeah, and I think we also have Dark Knight Returns.
Dark Knight Returns.
Both Frank Miller.
So
kind
those
of
are kind of classic graphic novel superhero treatments. But maybe we can move beyond the superhero realm.
Yeah, definitely. So, if you were a fan of the post-apocalyptic stuff we were talking about last year, you might be really interested in Why the Last Man, which is not at all, I think, superhero-y. It's definitely kind of told a story about the last man on Earth, left with all of the women of the Earth. So everyone with a Y chromosome is gone, and it's his story. So that's pretty interesting. Classic Alan Moore, V for Vendetta, or even Watchmen kind of fall into that category too.
Right. And of course, if you're hitting on the post-apocalyptic, you can't forget about Walking Dead, which we have.
Oh yeah.
The omnibus editions, which go like up through issue 96, and it's fun, especially if you watch the show Walking Dead, to see it's kind of an alternate universe from the show of the original comic book series.
But okay, you two. Now, listen. So I think Mouse was my last graphic novel.
Okay, yeah.
And that was some time ago.
Well, and tell us what Mouse is.
Okay, and so Mouse is a really striking story. Art Spiegelman was an illustrator, and his father was a Holocaust survivor. And it's about their relationship as the dad tells him stories, but it's for instance, but he just grew up in an experience where there's a lot of what's called non-survivor guilt. Okay, and certainly the father has survivor guilt. Okay, and so what happens is, like he says, he says as a kid, "I'm hungry," and his father would respond, "You don't know what hunger is till you're in a room with 5 other people and 1 loaf of bread."
Right.
And it would be that kind of thing. He could top anything. So it's just this, huge sort of pressure and wanting to hear the story, wanting to understand the story, and really being very damaged by the story. So there's a couple of different stories going on at the same time. You're reading more than one. But now, what I want to ask you guys with this set
And
and
Mouse won the
everything,
Pulitzer, and that's
and it was
yeah,
a
yeah,
prize
sorry.
winning, and he has gone on, Art Spiegelman, to make some other really significant books, including one on 9/11,
9/11.
In the
post
Shadow of
9/11,
No Towers.
The Shadow of No Towers,
Which we have.
Yes.
But that said, and everything that we so far talked about, are there any yucks in these books? I mean, because
do you mean by that?
well, I will tell you,
Excellent.
because actually, people would say to me, they'd come in and go, "Do you guys have anything like fun to read?" Okay, and I would say to them, earlier on in my tenure as the collection management librarian, I wouldn't admit it. I take my little sheriff's badge off, and I'd say, well, no, we pretty much have the ones where somebody has to die, and
Serious
literature. And so, I mean, are there people doing comic graphic novels? Is I guess what I'm asking.
Which is an awesome.
And I'm seeing this great face. I see these great faces.
Well, no, that's
we
an
do have some-
excellent question. I think we have things that are fun to read.
Yeah.
I don't know
Great.
that they're funny. I mean,
we
there
have
is.
Peanuts. I mean, we have a collection down there of Charlie Brown stuff. They're in.
Sure, yeah.
We just don't like it, Joe. You're asking.
And they're
we don't-
educational. I mean,
we're
the
nerds.
Peanuts were very
We don't read them.
philosophical.
That's true.
Okay.
One thing that would be fun, and I don't know if it's funny, but is like Neil Gaiman's Sandman series.
Okay.
Oh,
Which
yeah.
we do have 2 big books of that, and it was an ongoing series for a number of years. Now they're in this collected book, but it was a comic book, and he made this mythic character of the Sandman that lives forever and has all these kind of mini adventures.
Okay.
It does verge on horror. There's some pretty ugly
Oh yeah,
stuff
I would
in there,
definitely
but it's
classify
not a
that
kid.
as horror.
Yeah.
I was kind of
Yes.
surprised when you said Neil Gaiman. I'm like, I can't
Yeah.
picture him
But the
doing
thing
this
with it
sort
is
of
it really-
cutesy novel.
Yeah, but when you
It's
sit
not a
down
style.
with it, you have to take it as this fun approach to some very serious topics.
Okay.
But it's you would read it, as it's not a complete literary work in the way Mouse is, right? It's this ongoing story of this character that weaves and goes through different stuff. So.
Okay.
And I think there are a lot of graphic novels that instead of dealing with like huge issues like the Holocaust or even like these kind of mythic concepts like Sandman or some of the
Superman,
superhero
yeah.
stuff, you have comics that are just about people's lives. And of course there is sadness, there's humor. So those, I think, are the kind of thing that if you're not really into comics, those actually might be really attractive because it's more like, reading a novel. And so, something I think I would recommend would be American Born Chinese or Persepolis. Both of those are coming-of-age novels that are about, Persepolis is this young girl living in Iran during the Islamic Revolution, and then American Born Chinese, really different, is a young Chinese American boy who is like in the middle of, I think, the Midwest, and so dealing with being the only Asian American kid in his class and kind of trying to navigate, like, he really just wants to be like the other kids, and his family is constantly pulling him back towards his Chinese roots. So just those are really common, like just dealing with the coming of age, identity issues, and they're both really, really great. So well written, and the art is incredible in both of those.
Something like Fun Home.
Oh my God, Fun Home is. I think if you are a literary person and love reading, Fun Home is definitely for you. It's one of the most complex graphic novels I've ever read, but the writing and the art are really well done. And again, it's a personal story. It's really a story about this woman's father. Alison Bechdel's the writer. It's about her father and his struggle with sexuality and identity issues, and then how that impacts her own struggle with those same issues as she grows up and goes through college. And it's about their relationship. So it's really kind of a touching father-daughter story, a complex father-daughter story, and a really complex coming-of-age story.
Right. Along those same lines, one of our secondary texts for our One Book, One College program on Giovanni's Room is Aliki Murray's book A+C Forever, which is a graphic novel that I really loved, and it's an alternative text to Giovanni's Room, but it tells a story of 2 high school kids that are dealing with kind of the who am I going to become kind of issues, and dealing with sexual orientation, gender identity, and it's a super sweet story. I think a lot of our 18-year-old traditional age students would really take to it because it's dealing with an environment they've just left, the high school world, and all of it's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the art's a little bit different than your traditional comic book.
Yeah, very edgy. Yeah, breaking down some of those lines it's great.
Yeah. Also, for those of you who might not have read a graphic novel before and just kind of want to maybe look at some art, see what it's all about, we do have a couple of anthologies that I think are worth noting. So we have one called Womanthology. And what's notable about this is that it's all women writers and artists. And the comics world has been very traditionally male-dominated. And so it's really great to see kind of how wide and broad and amazing all of these women are who are writing and illustrating comics. So that's absolutely worth reading. And then we have a series called The Graphic Canon.
Oh, yeah.
And it's kind of some of the best artists in comics today illustrating their take on classic literature. And so sometimes you'll have a full poem or short story that's illustrated. Sometimes it's just an impression that the artist has of the book. But it starts with graphic canon number 1, from the Epic of Gilgamesh to Shakespeare to Dangerous Liaisons, all the way through David Foster Wallace's Infinite Jest. So it really covers the span of literature, and it's pretty exciting.
And I think that's a big thing with if people are new and looking to try to get into graphic novels, is to remember that graphic novels are, it's like regular novels. There's a whole range of stuff, and some things you're going to like and some things you're not going to like. And saying, oh, I don't like graphic novels is kind of like saying, oh, I don't like movies. I mean, there's something out there for you. It's just having the patience to explore and understand how it works. And I think we've worked in the library to try to have a range of stuff in our graphic novel collection. We're always purchasing and adding.
Right, but we're going to work harder to get some yucks in here.
Yeah, okay, we have to
Yes,
get
definitely.
the comedies on the list. Any final titles you want to throw out there, Tish? that
One thing I do want to mention, if you are someone who is actually interested in creating graphic novels and that kind of creative side, we do have a number of things that would help you as you are thinking about that. And one thing I wanted to mention was What It Is by Linda Berry. She's an incredibly talented, also local writer and artist. And her book, What It is kind of a guide for creativity kind of outside of the comics realm too, but definitely if you're interested in drawing and writing, that's a really great thing to check out. Jessica Abel also has an excellent guide to creating comics, and I recommend taking a look at that. I forget the title right now, but it's in our collection as well.
Great. Okay, well, if we've mentioned something that interests you, come to the library, give us a call, talk to us. We're happy to help you. Any of the librarians on duty can do that. We hope you will join us for our graphic novels symposium. The website is www.morainevalley.com/comicsculture. You can find that off the library homepage. And thank you for listening.
Thanks again.
Thank you.